Welcome to episode 109 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast. Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and in this one, almost every single game this week has been decided by single-digit margins. It is unbelievable. This is the first time it's been 6+, with thus the name of our episode for this week being Close Encounters, because they were all very, very close games, pretty much right up until the end, except for one, and we will talk about that in detail. But without further ado, how are you doing, Mr. Cyric?
Not too bad, not too bad. And yeah, as I said, it was a good week to have a bit of time to watch the footy. For the most part, I did miss the unexpectedly close game. Well, not unexpectedly, but the Essendon Essendon Carlton game. I went to a concert. I went to see Clipping. Clipping is a hip hop act featuring David Diggs, who some people may know Hamilton, the musical.
Yes.
And others may know. He was actually in the last season of The Boys.
He was.
I got told this. I don't.
This I can confirm, but you did not hear it originally from me.
No. So yeah, apparently he played like some sort of priest character. I'm assuming worshipping suit man boy.
Homelander?
Boy.
Yes.
I've forgotten his name. Homelander, that's it.
You would be correct.
Yes. I know about it, the voice from people talking, but yeah, so he was fantastic. He's got great vocals. He's got one of the best deliveries. And if you want to know a bit about his music, it's pretty much if you have hip hop but inspired by a lot of horror movie genres, I think would be the best way to describe it. A bit experimental too, so had a lot of fun, enjoyed myself, and had some good football to watch as well.
Yeah, the games this week, even if you love or hated a lot of the teams, were very close and very entertaining. I mostly got to see the Sydney and St Kilda game, which that was an absolute nail biter.
That might have been match of the round.
Honestly,
really good match.
I agree. Even the VFL game prior to that was extremely close. Like, I believe St Kilda's VFL team, I think, only won by like 3 points. So like both games were very evenly matched. But yeah, like I didn't get to watch the Essendon Carlton game. I was also out, which was very unfortunate timing for both of us. But I did still manage to catch a fair bit of the footy this week, and I'm very excited to talk about it this week.
Yeah, so shall we get started?
Yes, we will jump over to the Adelaide Oval for our first game of the week. A Thursday night clash between the Crows and the Cats, and our first nail-biter of the round with only a 1 point margin. The Crows winning out 11-9-75 to 10-14-74.
Yes, one of probably should have been 2 games to finish by a point. I think there was another one that was a point scored very late. I think that was Sydney and St Kilda. But yes, this was Adelaide, and it was really pivotal for both teams. Adelaide, they finally win a close one against an actual contender. Adelaide have had a lot of close calls. They've only really beaten the bottom 6 teams when they've been able to scrap a win. I think that was St Kilda and Port Adelaide. But this one, it was off the back of some immense pressure. Some nice matchup wins like Archie against Stewart. Stewart obviously dominating the last few times that they've come up against Adelaide, and he managed to do a pretty good whirl. And McAndrews, the ruckman, we've been loving him all year, and he took Blitzars and De Koning. De Koning, I think, was actually playing more number 1 ruck. I don't exactly have the numbers, but by the hit-out counts and all that, it seemed to be. So, he had a really big influence, and he was pretty, massive 51 hit-outs, fair few to advantage. Unfortunately, Adelaide didn't quite turn that into a clearance advantage. But as I said, they were generating a lot of pressure, and it wasn't turnovers that came from this pressure, but rather the limiting the strengths and causing their run and carry to be hampered, which we've seen in a few games this year, is one of the ways you can beat Geelong. And second time that an Adelaide team has done it to the Cats at Adelaide Oval.
Just to go back on the McAndrew point, it was 51 hitouts. You are correct. To De Koning 16, and Blitzars is 16. With and Shannon Neal getting 9 and Jack Henry getting 2. And that's not even to include Toby Murray on the chop out, getting 10 hit outs himself.
Yeah, Toby Murray was all right, actually. It's sort of very limited. They didn't really put him in the forward line, but he, just supporting a young ruckman. And yeah, as I said, so it was a very interesting one because, as I said, on the flip side, even though Geelong were mitigated, they did have, as I said, a bit of a clearance win. But they did have a harder time hitting targets. And one of the big reasons for this was, of course, if you didn't hear about it, the lack of fitness by Jeremy Cameron. A lot of people said he was probably injured coming towards the game. It really, you have to assume it was, because that was one of the more lackluster performances.
Not that Geelong themselves will come out and say anything about it, specifically, but what the people are going to assume is that it's tied to his injury that he did during the grand final, where he broke his arm, and that's why he's not really applying his body as much as he used to in terms of tackling and pressure. And even Marcus as well. Like, he seems like he's really struggling to take Marcus as of late too.
Yeah, exactly, and that was pretty clear. But I will say though, I was very clear that the ground game, for both teams actually, but it's what kept Geelong in the game, was very good. A lot of clever opportunities slotted. Players like Bose and Texan. Bose and the Texan kicked really clutch goals. In terms of ground level stuff, it's hard to go past. Where is it? Jack Martin, who I think had a couple. I think one was a mark, but he had a couple of one crumb for a goal, and I think a knock on to a goal assist. Basically, he was really good. He's been pretty much a he was a Tyson Stengel replacement because of the issues that he's been having this year. Hasn't really seen the park. But the influential player of the night, it had to be Jordan Dawson. He has had a mammoth comeback since his unfortunate, family personal absence from football for I think it was only 2 games actually. I think. But he was instrumental.
He only missed 1 or 2 due to his brother's passing. But yeah, like since coming back from that, he has had a fantastic couple of games.
Yeah, exactly. And, in this one, 9 tackles, 5 intercepts, 22 possessions, and 3 goals. He was one piling on the pressure in that midfield. Sam Berry as well was doing a pretty good role. But obviously, Dawson had more influence with ball in hand. So, as I mentioned, the centre clearance was probably the biggest hole in Adelaide's game, but the score from centre bounce was pretty even. The defence managed to hold up on their end. And it was a very small moments game. I forgot, what was the controversial call in this one? There's a few, because obviously all the close.
There's always a few when it comes to Adelaide.
Was it? I think they actually had more luck. Actually, I think Geelong actually got a bit hard done by late.
Potentially, I know there was a potential touch on a goal, but I can't remember if it was this game or if it was a game later in the week. That's
right. A few later, but this was the one where I think it was Dempsey didn't get a score review.
That's right. Yeah.
When he actually kicked it in play. Obviously too much butterfly effect to say that caused the game. But yeah, as I said, Adelaide, they got a bit lucky, but A, I don't think it was like a huge amount of luck. It's just, the late goals going their way. And B, they had a really good performance and they sort of deserved this win. I was a bit scrappy. As I said, I think Geelong, even though their run and carry was limited, they're still able to win the territory, win those hard ground balls. And Adelaide still have a bit of trouble moving it from the back half. That's, something that's been surprising, but pretty apparent in most of their matches. But they got out the good win. Their record's looking more solid. And just as, a few people have ruled them out, they're back on the winner's block. They're contending well enough and looking solid.
Yeah, no, what Adelaide's shown us out of this game is that they are still very much a top 8 contending team. Like, there were definitely pieces that they were very much missing in terms of how their system kind of functioned. I think
Forward line and wings being the
Yeah,
main, I would
it
say.
was mostly forward line and wings. Obviously, they're still having a little bit of defensive issues. That's partly because of Keane. He had been such a cog, and we've talked about this already over the past month or like past couple of months since he's been out. But they have been able to kind of fill that patch for them against most teams. I think they did a pretty good job filling it in against Geelong here this week as well. Granted, Jeremy Cameron not really doing all that much probably helps that factor.
Yeah.
But
I mean, in a 1 point margin, it's hard not to say, well,
yeah,
him being played for a fitter player might have helped. But
again, it could have been a difference, but
he,
it's who knows.
we don't know. Like, he might have had other games where he was feeling the same before the match and, gone in fine. It's just this one didn't exactly go to plan. But, as I said, unfortunately, they got the worst outcome out of it.
Yep. But yeah, for the Crows, having Rankin, having finally hitting a lot better form, and he's been in the past couple of weeks, has been really good for them. Peatling has had some very, very good games recently. Millerer is having a fantastic season already so far. Again, having Dawson back in and him being pretty much at his best is so good for them. It's always good when your captain has such an incredible game because that does lift the team when you're leading from the front. And then like they've had issues with their front line over the past couple of weeks. Tex being in and out, mostly due to injury, hasn't helped them at all, and now he's out for suspension.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that in a moment. That probably won't help for next week, but in the meantime, like this was a really, really solid performance by them, and it definitely throws them back into contending for finals.
Yeah, and obviously, they'll probably get Rankin back. I don't think that was a long-term injury, and Phil Thorpe will come back to replace Tech, so it's not all doom and gloom. And plus, Hugo Kahan, the mid-season pickup, played a pretty good role.
Yeah, there were a couple.
He was really solid for
there were
3
a couple
quarters,
of,
and unfortunately got injured.
Yeah, that is really unfortunate timing. But like, there were a couple of mid-season pickups that were actually played this week right off the bat. And it's very interesting to see how they were immediately integrated. Like Hugo Hawkahan, looks like he integrated really well pretty much immediately. Campbell Lake in the St Kilda game is another one, which we'll touch on.
There was a couple in the Neil Danaher clash.
Yes.
Made their debuts and had a solid impact. I forget their names, but we will talk about them.
We will talk about those in due time. But yeah, no, this was a really good outing. I would say technically a good outing for both teams. Again, 1 point margin, like you can't. It's very much that's like very much a moments kind of thing.
Exactly.
But like apart from I guess like the whole Jeremy Cameron of it all, like I think Geelong had a very solid outing across the board.
Yeah, I think they were just more, they weren't as clean as I'd like. So they had a lot of the shape of their movement, but as I said, the pressure that Adelaide were able to hold on to was very good, and obviously it was pretty wet, especially in that first half.
Oh yeah.
So it was already tough enough conditions, and as I said, it just came to a scrap at the end, and they were able to get it out. I should say that Kahan, he wasn't actually. Hopefully he's not injured. It was more just a clash that made him sit out for the rest.
It didn't look like it was massively reported, so it might have just been precautionary.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's either he hit his schnoz pretty hard, and I don't think they probably had enough tape. It was against what's it called, Lachlan McAndrew. So,
big body.
Yeah, it was a pretty ugly crash. But I think both players actually ended up. Well, I said we would have heard if there was concussion symptoms, so hopefully that means they're fine to play.
Hopefully.
Don't know if they have to adopt a Jager O'Meara mask, but hopefully their schnozzers are fine for the immediate future.
Bring back a couple of players, the game,
of course. Yeah, exactly. But there's a couple of players who obviously didn't quite have as good as luck, and they are for Adelaide.
But despite only just coming back into the side, Calamachi has gone out again with a hamstring injury, and Jordan Butts with a calf injury. On the MRO side of things, Jack Martin was fined $2,000 for rough conduct against Josh Worrell. James Peatling was fined $1,875 for engaging in a melee with Bailey Smith. For some reason, Bailey Smith wasn't fined. I guess that's up to the MRO. And then Tex Walker has been suspended for 1 match. They did challenge it at the tribunal, which happened tonight. literally a couple hours ago as of recording this, and they did uphold the suspension. So he will be out. It was for rough conduct against Connor O'Sullivan, and he will not be playing in the game this week.
Yeah, essentially just to push into a marking contest. AFL has been pretty consistent with their findings for those, so I don't think it was a bigger surprise. But
yeah,
obviously with
after what happened
still
last
a
year,
newish rules. Yeah, with the obvious newish rules, it seems that most teams are taking this to the tribunal. But I didn't really think he was ever going to get away with that one.
No, I always thought it was. This was one of the ones that I did see, and I always thought it was there. So it's, it got, as long as the AFL is consistent with it, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Tex is probably a week in, week out player, so I'm doubly surprised actually because I think they're not playing at home next week. I don't know for sure, but
I mean, at this point, he just gets another week off, so it's fair enough for him, I guess.
Yeah, they're going to Marvel Stadium, so
well, there you go.
There you go.
All right. Speaking of Victoria, that's where we're heading next for our big Friday night clash between Hawthorn and the Western Bulldogs. And again, this is the second game of our single-digit margins, and it was an absolute incredible final quarter. 6-point margin, and the Dogs win it out 12-5, 77 to 9-17, 71.
This was probably the funniest match. Depending on, unless you hate North Melbourne that much to find that beatdown hilarious.
We'll talk about that one in a minute, but that was just sad.
Yeah, but this was, like Hawthorn, they had a modest 29-point lead. They looked really solid. But what will go down as one of the biggest botch jobs of a fairly competent team, as the Bulldogs successfully tried and created their own luck, I personally think. This contest was scrapped out a win. So despite the recent swing of form, the Bulldogs just didn't have any movement from the back half. I think we sort of talked about it last week. The Bulldogs have improvement in that area. Against a team like Hawthorn, I thought they would struggle, and they really did.
Part of that
spate of back half turnovers.
I know we've definitely talked about this over the past couple of weeks, but part of that was always mostly tied to Rory Lobb having to fill in as a chop out rock, which pulled him away out of that connection in that halfback to free up players like Bailey Dale and Riley West and all those sorts of players who tend to float a little bit back or are naturally in the halfback. But once with English having been in this week, I can't remember. Pretty sure it was.
They were still rotating Lob though.
Yeah.
They're working in.
It did still free Lob up to still be part of that connection and kind of keep their backline a little bit more stable than it had been recently.
No, he was actually playing in the forward line when he wasn't.
Okay, that part I didn't know because I didn't actually watch this game.
didn't kick a goal. Yeah, no, that's not good. Bailey Dale. He still had a lot of possession. He just turned the ball over. I think he had 2 or 3 kicks that probably led to. I think 3 kicks that I remember that led to score. One of them was a goal, and I think the other 2 were misses. I was just very unlucky. Bottom 2, there's going to be a few players that have had this. One in particular coming up later that will probably highlight, even though he's been pretty consistent for a very long time. But we're talking about the Hawks now. And as I said, the Hawks would comfortably slot these early on, with Watson and Joel having a blistering 15-minute period. That would separate the 2 teams. That was a 20-point margin.
Mm-hmm.
I said earlier, and the Dogs had another bad period in the centre. Jai Newcomb made the Bulldogs midfield look second-rate up to the half. And it looked like the Hawks were, I think they were still missing a few at halftime. I don't think it was that bad. It was actually 8-6. I think they just probably didn't get as much score per inside 50. I think that was a bit in the halftime because I thought it should have been a bit more the Hawks' way, just by the flow of game. But then, as I said, the Bulldogs did get a really nice rebound, and what happened was the magical disappearing act. It has been very much mentioned that Nick Watson in the halftime interview said that if Michael Selwood wouldn't walk, Michael Selwood, if he shouldn't talk the talk if you can't walk the walk, something like that.
Yeah.
Or he needs to walk the walk if you can't talk the talk. He had a very brilliant game up until halftime, and then he only had 2 possessions afterwards. It was one of the bigger personal collapses after a comment. It was the anti-Toby Green, talking about when he called Papley a bit chubby. But
That's
yes,
right.
as I said,
Forgot about that.
yeah. Yeah, so as I said, Hawthorn would keep similar territory and instead of advantage, but only kick 111, while the Bulldogs clawed back the margin and opened up their midfield. It wasn't all luck that the Hawks couldn't kick straight. Despite the inside 50 lock, the Dogs only allowed 3 more set shots and forced a lot of wide shots as the bend not break Bulldogs, as sort of, is very similar to the Brisbane Lions back when they were like really, really aggressive in their first years. Well, sorry, in the Collingwood loss grand final year and the first premiership, where they basically just protected their defense and just forced more favorable things. I think the obvious benefit of that is Buku Karmas, as I said, in the first half when their midfield wasn't protecting him. He looked a bit of all sorts, but he did actually come back. O'Donnell, I think, was another one that sort of did that. Selwood, obviously, really flipped the script on his early performance. So, it was just the Dogs doing what they did. It was limiting the Hawks' ball use. And as I said, statistics say it shouldn't have been quite enough. Obviously, Hawthorn really should have won this, but they come out the contest with 4 points, and they just scrapped the win. Their last game, they have had the biggest margin be 12 points, their loss against Carlton. But the rest they won, they are 6-0 in single-digit games and single-handedly keeping their hunt for a decent ladder spot alive.
So
it's been good.
What does this tell you then about the Bulldogs as a whole? Are they continuing on from previous years as the kind of just being flat track bullies, where they still can't really beat a top 8 side, or is this the year that they finally start to prove themselves as they have started to get their injuries back?
It's just showing, because I think what they have, and they haven't really, I know obviously they've gotten English, but they've still had a spate of injuries in other areas. They're not quite playing exactly how you would expect them to be playing. Well, not expect them to be playing, but they're not playing exactly to what their full squad strength allows them to.
Yeah.
But as I said, I think the resilience is just how adaptable they are for what we thought was going to be a fairly one-dimensional team coming into the season. Like last year, we saw that it was pretty straightforward, the games that they were winning and losing. When they'd lose in certain areas, they just woeful. And they've curtailed this.
Yeah.
That's no matter what the season goes to, they have 100% been more flexible and done more to solve their problems than they did last year. So even if they miss the finals, I think they've taken a step forward.
Yeah, I completely
regardless.
Agree. Just looking at their injury list, the only big pieces that they're missing are Cleary, who had a fairly consistent season. Sam Darcy, obviously, with the knee injury that ruled him out of the rest of the season. I'd say Riley Garcia, but he has been fairly in and out of the side. But when he has been in, he's looked all right. Libba, of course, but again, that comes into just Libba, pushing into getting close to retirement age, so they've got to be careful with him. And Vandermeer, who's always been in and out of the side with injury anyway. The positive, though, the one big positive of this game is the return of Cody Waitman after almost 2 years of not stepping onto an AFL field. This was his first game back, and whilst they did manage his minutes, they didn't play him entirely throughout the game, which was very, very good. He got through the game unscathed, and it's so good to see him back out there.
Yeah, and it's not like he's really it's not like he really was tepid into the contest. He put his body on a fair few half balls, and he wasn't the most influential player on the ground or whatever, but in terms of a buy-in, he didn't really take a step back. He was he was doing what he needs to, and he should get better with a bit of polish. But yeah, as I said, he was really handy to have in there.
Yeah,
As I said, there's been
added a bit of X factor that a player like Libba would normally add to that system, and it was just really really good to see overall.
And the thing is like, it adds to some forwards that have, actually improved. It's not just waiting to replace, some underperforming players, like Arthur Jones. I know he didn't have quite his best match, but he had a lot of possessions, still kicked a goal. Jordan Crofts kicked 3 goals. Must admit, fairly soft goals. He was probably the a lucky recipient of a couple, but you still got to get him. And like all these sort of players, Cooper Hines as well had a pretty okay performance. So it's like, they've now got healthy competition in spots that you wouldn't really have expected earlier in the year.
Yeah, and there's also like Trelaw, who fair chance this could end up also being his last season too. Like he's still like going at it really really hard and putting his body on the line as well, and is just giving it his all for this one last shot of an AFL premiership, and it's actually really really good to see him like still hitting the numbers he would get when he was younger.
Yeah, because as I said, he plays sort of more of a half forward role in this game. Obviously, because the Western Bulldogs are starting to get their midfield back together. Obviously, we've seen Ed Richards take a lot more centre bounces, Matthew Kennedy play a lot more centre bounces. But as I said, there was a few times where he just, it's just those veteran little moves. Like as I said, he's more, linking up in chains and all that. But as I said, still 1 goal, 1. Still, I think it was 4 or 5 score involvements. I haven't actually got the stats here, but yeah.
I was having a look at the stats before, and I'm pretty sure it's roughly on the money of what you're going on with.
Yeah. Okay, 4 score involvements. But, yeah. Anyway, so that was fairly good. Like Hawthorn theoretically weren't bad. Like, this was just an aberration in goal kicking. As I said, somewhat created by the Bulldogs.
Again, I still very much love their defense. I'm still like, I think their defense still works really well, but it's just, I don't know, there was just something in this game.
It was actually a bit shaken.
Yeah.
Like, apparently, well, actually, no, I saw this. I think it was this game. I think someone lost a lot of one-on-one contests that you don't normally. I think it was Josh Battle. I think he lost like 3 out of 5 or something. Let me get the stats. Not that really right. Yeah, there you go. 5 contested one-on-ones, lost 3. James Sicily did really, really good defensively.
As he does.
Also lost the plot with his temper.
As he also does.
Yeah, that was a throwback to like 2000s odd. Sicily. And then, as I said, Blake Hardwick found it a bit rough. Obviously, after having such a good run, the forward line missed a couple of spots early and then went to the back line to try and change things up, but nothing really came from that. I think Weddle ended up going forward late, but they just couldn't quite get it all together. But like at the end of the day, as I said, they should have won this like 17-9, and this is a blowout. So it's hard not to say that they didn't do most things right, apart from kick it.
I imagine going off of their X score, the margin would be so much different to what we're actually seeing.
Oh, I mean, I can tell you now, it was expected score. They expected to get 94.9, essentially 95, and they were 24 points behind that, where the Bulldogs were 4 points above that. Which meant that the X-win percent for Hawthorn was given at 91.2. Again, probably more going to 85 points.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of, because sometimes behinds lead to more behinds. But it's
it's not a pretty statistic.
Still deserved.
But absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, still, like 30 shots to goal to 19. You very rarely see a team get more than 10 shots per game.
Yeah.
A greater than 10 shot advantage and lose. So I say that Port's done it a couple of times in recent history.
Hey, so is Richmond. So I'm just taking my hand off the wheel on this one.
In recent time?
Maybe not as recent, but it would have been in like probably
Hmm.
past 10 years at the very least.
Yeah. Probably in like that early, what do you call it? The early dimmer years, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say like 2010 to 2015 would be somewhere in that ballpark at the very least.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so apart from that, yeah, but as I say, credit to Hawthorn's midfield for dominating, even though it was early. Like Josh Ward Jai Newcombe were absolutely fantastic, and then obviously Nick Watson in everything but the second half.
yeah,
And Will Day, he actually this was his quote unquote first game, where he just had his normal Will Day impact. So it was good to see that.
it's good
He's
that he
made a
is.
bit of a difference already.
It is good to see that he is having a lot of good impact. After coming back from his injuries and like actually looking fit and healthy. Like it's
Yeah,
really good to see for him. Speaking of fit and healthy, we do have one injury from this game. Lockie McNeil going out with concussion, so he will not be
yeah,
playing this week unless they have to buy. I can't remember. We'll have a look at that in a moment. And then on the MRO side of things, there were 10 players fined in this one, so give me a moment. Nick Caulfield was fined $1,000 for other misconduct against Jack Ginnivan. Might have just given him the middle finger or whatever. I don't entirely know. But it's a standard Jack Ginnivan behavior, I guess, to kind of be on the
mm,
receiving end of that. Michael Selwood and Jack Ginnivan were also fined $1,000 each for instigating a melee, whereas Nick
yep,
Watson, Blake Hardwick, Rory Lobb, Michael Selwood again, James Sicily, Will Lewis, and Mabio Chol were all fined $1,000 each for engaging in said melee.
yeah. There were spot fires all around.
Yeah.
Although, oh no, Sicily is there. I was gonna say, I can imagine him not being.
It would be really weird if he's not
Yes,
there, because he is very hot headed.
yeah. As I said, but yeah, that was just honestly the thing about this game. Is like we said in the first year of Hawthorn, they were very fun. They were the Hollywood Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
But they had like a tiny bit of immaturity about them. And then for the last year and a half, as I said, they've sort of been actually, we've talked in various games, the increase in maturity and all that. But I feel like this was sort of a step back game where they fell into a bit of old habits. Maybe, what do you call it? Count the chickens before they hatch, take
Yep.
the I was gonna say take the cradle before the baby. I don't think that's it. I forgot what the other one is. But you know what I'm talking about.
You Perthians and
It's a
your
goodbye
backward
cradle before the
sayings.
baby. Yeah, you know what I'm talking
No,
about.
I knew what you meant.
Spending it before you got it.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
yeah, as I said, I look, if I'm Sam Mitchell, I'm just saying, hey, you basically had this. Here's everything you did right. But you also got ahead of yourselves, and don't be talking too much smack in the halftime interviews.
Oh yeah, 100%. All right, jumping over now to our Saturday game, starting off with a very special one. It is the return to Bunbury, where North Melbourne take a game out to the west for money because they no longer have games going to Tassie. They played Fremantle. So for the
Wow,
before I talk,
played's a bit.
played is a bit of a loose term in this situation. But I do want to mention,
Yeah.
just before I continue on with the scores and stuff, is that this is the first ever time that there have been two games in Perth. I won't say on the same weekend, but at least on the same day.
Not
Um,
on the same day. Yeah.
which is it's such an
On the
interesting,
weekend, it's happened.
which is such an interesting statistic, honestly. But
Yeah.
the scoreline, it is kind of what you expect when you're coming up against one of the best teams of the competition. However, we all talked about North being on a steady incline. This might be a little bit more of a
Hmm.
downcline decline this week with
Decline,
our
yeah.
124-point margin. The Dockers obviously absolutely belted the Roos 24-11, 155 to 4-7-31.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm gonna do a quick check. I don't think that they had a worse game last year. I can't remember any
Not this big of a
solo
margin.
game.
Not this big of a margin.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
But as I said, it was a bad game, and it was, as I said, just to say the scale of this, and you probably, because there's a lot of stats to come out of this. They were kicked their last goal in the game in roughly the 7th minute of the second quarter and only have 4 behinds to add to their total score. 3 of those coming after halftime, so that was their total after that. And Fremantle obviously record their biggest win, something that they haven't really been threatening to do all year. Like, they've had some comfortable wins.
And,
obviously, the win against Melbourne was solid.
And, like,
they
realistically,
haven't been thrashing.
They haven't really needed to have, like, do a massive thrashing and get a massive percentage boost because they've just been winning games. Like, they've gotten the 4 points, staying top of the ladder. That's kind of always the main goal. But
yeah, well, we're not going to talk about the ladder until like the games get even. But they've got a comfortable lead at the moment. You know, it's either either 3 or 4 game lead depending on who you're comparing to. It's a theoretical.
It's also very much a theoretical ladder at the moment because the games aren't even. But like it's so interesting to look at. Okay, I just brought up the ladder now just for comparative sake. Freo, because of this percentage boost, Freo are now 0.6 above Sydney in percentage plus a game. So they're both. So yeah, Sydney is on 147.3, Fremantle's on 147.9.
Yeah. And wasn't really expecting that. In fact, I was saying that like Freo couldn't do it just from their game style, and that they were always going to have to stay away from Sydney. I don't think it'll matter too much. I think the top 2.
No, I think it's.
I don't want to say it's locked, but it's very hard to see.
It is really hard to kind of say that one of these teams is going to drop out of the top 2. They could be threatened, but I don't know. I considering what we've seen of their runs home, I think it'll be fairly comfortable.
No. Freo have I think it's a 3-game stint at Optus after this, or 2. Anyway, the effort of Fremantle was immense for 3 quarters. The last saw them ease up, and yet the most damning thing is the Roos would still turn the ball over, make mistakes, and you wonder if Freo could have just played a bit looser and still won by the same amount, because like the lack of pressure didn't actually help Melbourne do anything. To be fair, they were pretty dead at that point. I think, maybe if they let him in a bit earlier, it's whatever. But, like, the fact that there was just no junk time, like, often sometimes a bit critical on junk time footy, or like, but when you don't have it, it just looks ugly.
Yeah.
Anyway. So the midfield was absolutely cooked. Cherry had his worst game in a couple of years. Wardlaw, Wardlaw, who I actually thought was all right. Looked like witches' hats. Luke Deviat's Uniac, he had a few possessions, but like, as I said, the other players are running rampers around him. Like, this was a midfield missing Sarong and Johnson. Johnson playing some pretty good games up until this point. Neil Erasmus, who looked pretty mediocre last week, popped in the midfield and just had a laugh. As the handball-heavy game sort of suited him, and Brayshaw and Young did the hard but classy game. Voss couldn't decide if scoring or stirring up Griffin Logue was more fun in this game. Amos cameoed with some nice shots, and Tracy took Comben a bit too far out of his depths. Comben, I don't think has done that well when he's being dragged out of defence. Even though he's a bit athletic, it's a bit weird, but I think he likes a bit of assistance in the back line, and the Kangaroos are not one that gives their other defenders a lot of assistance.
As we've talked about all season long, North's defense is still very much their worst aspect. And when you're coming up against, a team that's top of the ladder and just extremely experienced overall in being able to dismantle a defense, this was always gonna be a big issue for them in this match.
Yeah. I'm talking about what was bad. Kangaroos' ball use was inexcusable. Like, I must admit, I was semi-masochistically statistically looking for some of the fringier stats to come out from such a blowout. And what I saw, obviously from the champion data rating of ball use, was that 18 players for North Melbourne had a champion data rating for ball use of 1 or under when it came to the ball use. And as I said, that is 1/11th of Sam Switkowski's output in other words. He was the second highest rated player in terms of ball use, but he just finished on flat 11, so I used his number.
Fair enough.
Yeah, as I said, it was pretty dreadful. No stoppage from Freo movements. All their chains post halftime were just sideways kicks before they turned the ball on after. It was dark days. Obviously outclassed by top of the ladder on a team on song, but it was just a complete lack of effort. I think only 3 players, maybe, like, not even in performance wise, just on effort wise, gets a pass. I think Wardlaw, Trembath, and Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly actually thought Zerha put a bit of effort in. He was sort of asked to stop a lot of the rot, but he just couldn't do much.
Yeah, that's understandable.
He had good efforts, but his ball use was probably just as bad as everyone else. As I said, the 3 players, Wardlaw, Trembath, and Parker, I would say were at least the only ones in the field putting their team in a position to succeed. The only one, obviously, that also gets a pass was the injury early, which you'll talk about in a second, unless you want to talk about anything else. I know I've only talked about North, but
there's not really much else to really say.
Yeah, Omac was really good coming in. Like, as I said, he's been so good whenever he's come back for an injured player.
Mm-hmm.
Murphy Reid, absolutely phenomenal. Put himself back in All-Australian conversation. I already talked about Erasmus. Even Judd McVie had a solid game, and we've been sort of giving him a bit of a knock. Thought he was playing in a very awkward position. But yeah, as I said, it's nice to see Driscoll as well. I think the wings have probably been the weakest bit of Freman's game, and that looked fantastic. Again, no pressure will do that and make anyone look good. But it is what it is. I don't really think there's much to say.
If this game just ended up being a really good test for Freo's proper structure in its entirety, like basically at 100%. I would say they succeeded without a hitch. Like, if those wings look good, and we're thinking that were kind of the worst parts of Freo, then I'd say all boxes are cleared. If O'Driscoll stays healthy, they could very much have that clean run home and win every match that we're kind of looking at this point in time. Like, obviously, I know there's a bit of a running theory that they will end up dropping a random run at some point, and the funny thing is that it could end up being the Derby just because of randomness sake.
Theoretically,
statistically, on paper, Freo could genuinely win the rest of their games up to finals, and it's so interesting to think about because it's been such a long time since we've seen a team go on this kind of a win streak in the men's, at the very least.
Yeah, because, as I said, even the teams that have dominated, won most of the season, the normally losses have come in the mid-season. So to start the season on a loss, and I don't think they will go undefeated, but it will, I'm imagining it would be a first. I can't say for sure. I'm not Sir Swamp Things. But it is very good. And that being said, they've still got some good teams. They just play them at home. Obviously, they've gotten Geelong next week. Who beat them before. Can't get too ahead of yourself, but geez.
Off the top of my head, I think the longest streak that we've seen in the AFL is 21, 22 wins in a row, and I think that was done by Collingwood in the 90s.
Geelong won 25.
Geelong has gone on a big streak as well at some point, didn't they? So it's ages and ages ago, but there's definitely been some big streaks throughout the years. But yeah, if Freo continue to, power through in this form that they're on, they could very much become an unstoppable force until the pressure of finals arrives. And that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah, well, I said, if this all just came to straight sets, it would be one of the biggest
it'd be hilarious.
Disappointments.
But it would be very disappointing.
I don't know, do Freo even deserve that? I'm not sure. But, it would, if it was Carlton, I'd be laughing.
If it was Carlton, it would be even funnier. And we'll talk about that very soon as well.
Yeah.
As
I said, pretty much.
Yeah, there's not really much to really talk about this. Freo were great, North were not. And unfortunately, they do have an injury from Riley Hardiman, who went out with concussion. So if they have a game this week, he will not be playing. But may as well just move over to the next clash because there isn't too much more to cover in that game. So we'll jump over
No.
to the QClash, in fact. Heading up to the Gold Coast, as the Gold Coast Suns hosted the Brisbane Lions in the second Q. Is it the second QClash already, or is this the first
It's
one?
the second QClash.
There you go.
They put this close together because it was apparently Queensland Day in Queensland or something like that. They had like a thing on the ground.
Okay, fair enough.
And
I have
I was
noticed that they do often try to coincide this with like a Queensland holiday of sorts. I know they've done it around times of the Ekka, which is normally a little bit later in the year. So it is always good that they try and actually coincide like one of the biggest matches for Queensland.
Yeah.
During a Queensland holiday.
It's just good to get, people around the footy as well. You know?
Absolutely.
But yeah, this was pretty much the second not close contest. Like, yeah, the Suns were sort of in it at halftime, but they were just awful defensively.
Oh yeah.
And I think only really some junk time goals sort of saved that. I think the effort drop in the third quarter, the absolute dropping of their midfield will have some signs for concern, and also as well as some what you basically talk about at the end of the match, because nothing really went that right for them. They looked really mediocre.
No.
And they just couldn't take advantage of a struggling Brisbane. Like, I knew that the favourites were slightly favouring the Suns more than I thought they would definitely win. But they just felt like they really should have had this one. They just didn't defend hard enough. Brisbane's midfield was a bit hit or miss as well, so they're still struggling. But Neil was just standout in his ability to get first hands, link up to scoring chains, and was a step above anyone else on the field or for either team in the midfield. Gold Coast had no answers for Morris, and stoppages again were the healthy source of score for Brisbane.
It's
good backup.
Before you keep going, it's just so interesting how whilst Brisbane has started introducing a lot of younger blood through their defense, like it's so interesting that their veteran defenders could not stop a 20-year-old from kicking 7 goals, which, by the way, that did lead to their 15-16 106 margin, whereas the Suns had 11-9-75. So like it's just really interesting the fact that like Logan Morris hasn't even played like 75 games. Like he's still very, very young and very green, but is having such solid performances in their forward line.
Yeah, well, they couldn't really do anything really because Logan Morris, he never really had a solid thing. Like he smashed Collins early. They decided he had too much pace for him, so they put Mac Andrews on him. And Mac Andrews just doesn't have the defensive capabilities.
He's been very hit and miss this season, which has been really weird to see, honestly.
Honestly, to me, it makes sense. Like, as I said, he's not a good one-on-one defender. So, again, in case of, like, stoppages where you're more likely to come up to a one-on-one thing, obviously a clearance, you set up in set positions. Like, you're more likely not to have help, and that's exposed him a bit more.
Yeah.
Where, as I said, I think it's up to other defenders around him. Because, again, that's how it is. Like, you have to look at Mac Andrews as an offensive weapon in the back line. And that offense is intercept marks. So, you say, okay, you might lose a couple of goals on your direct opponents, but he might set up 4 or 5 and maybe put on pressure. Maybe even prevent the ball from coming in if he sags up high enough, depending on...
Yeah, you want to take advantage of the fact that he can leap and that he can actually take strong pack marks, whilst in the process of, I guess the way to describe it is, using the momentum from moving to intercept. Like he's able to do that really well, but he struggles to do it whilst standing still, essentially, for one-on-one contests.
Yeah, and I think the thing is also very much a player that will take the aggressive read option. So, a lot of contests, he looks out of position as like, oh, he's not running back hard enough. But that's because he's probably setting up for, plays that he doesn't expect to go as deep, which has often been a problem. And, as I said, I think that's been the problem for the Gold Coast. Because again, I don't think this is bad. Like last year, they had a fantastic intercept game. Like it's the same defense. It's just the system isn't allowing it to do its natural role, and there's no plan B.
Yeah, pretty
Because I
much.
said, like they haven't fixed the stoppages all this year. It's gotten worse with Petrarca in there. Not that I think he's playing bad, but you can't deny that the shape
Yeah,
of it is all off.
we've already talked about this
Jared
at
Witz
length.
is probably the easiest place to like put on a personal drop off leading to it all. But yeah, it's just been a very mixed bag of midfielders going in there. Like we saw Took Miller go in there. Bailey Humphries was looking to be a permanent fixture in it before he went off. Will Graham took a few. They played Ned Moyle a lot more, who I thought was fine. But sort of, I think it was a bit outshone by Darcy Thought. He only had 3 hitouts, but was really good around the ground. So, as I said, it is what it is. But, for me, the biggest thing was really how, lackluster their running efforts were to prevent this. Because, again, it's one thing to say, oh, you've got a bit of exposure in that area, but just to be so forward heavy when it's clearly not working is the biggest concern. It's the lack of leadership to say, okay, we're not getting the forward contest that we want. We really need to stop the damage because it's going to lose us the game, and it did. On the flip side, talking about Brisbane's defense, they get a few defensive players back. Wilmot's gone from being pretty much the only informed defender to just going back to his intercept hunting. Obviously, Wilmot's been fine for all of that, but he's had to do a few lockdown roles where he's been able to roam. He was absolutely dominant in that game, probably best on ground. And I think Harris Andrews will continue to play better after a bit of struggle, if this game was any indication. He had a pretty solid-ish game, but, as I said, he really struggled for at least a 3-run stint.
Yeah,
it wasn't a perfect performance.
The fact that backline did get a little hampered with injury for a while there, really did stretch him thin, and you could just see it in the way that he was playing, that he was just really struggling to do the things that he is normally able to do. And having the fact that the injuries that have come back have now freed up Wilmot as well. That just opens up more opportunities for Harris Andrews just to do the things that he does and do them well.
Yeah, and just after a week that we all were like, oh, Brisbane are going to do the 4P, whatever, and yada, yada, yada. And look, as I said, I thought that their run was statistically poor. I do think they still have some vulnerabilities. I'm not going to say that they're back. But, it is funny how quick we are to sometimes jump the gun. I don't think, as I said, aside from Fremantle and Sydney, every team's had their flaws.
Yeah.
And even Fremantle and Sydney have theoretical flaws. It just haven't resulted in more than a loss here and there. So, as I said, Brisbane 1 game outside the top 4, and Gold Coast, I would say, have taken a step back from last year. As I said, there's little improvement on the outside. There's a massive dip in inside midfield production. Their forward line's been about what you would expect. Still probably outperforming in some areas, but yeah, it's that defense getting exposed. I don't think there's too many individual players that have dropped their heads. As I said, theoretically, it's hard to tell. Sam Collins has had that statistically different a year than last year. Obviously, it's hard to rate defensive performance. It's not like it's losing many more one-on-ones or whatever, but
I think it's
systematically, it's just not it.
I think part of it part of it is just a systemic issue. And again, we've talked about this for at length, about their midfield rotations. Miller, Petrarca, Rowell, Anderson, and whether that really does work. And so far, we don't think it does. When one of them has been out, it's actually functioned a lot better. And I always likened it to Richmond's current system with Hopper and Prestia and Taranto, and how when we only have one of them out, the other two work perfectly well. We have all 3 and it doesn't work. Like there's
Yeah.
it's a weird it's that's why as much as I think Petrarca does add a lot of different dynamics to this team, it doesn't it just feels really weird that him and Rao play such a similar role that it there's no real way to fit both of them into that midfield efficiently without having to rotate one up forward for at least 50% of the time if both are on field. It just doesn't
Yeah.
systemically work. But in saying that, I think if McAndrew is able to get back onto his intercept game, I think the flow from the backline will actually start to improve a lot more because you already have excellent runners in Noble and in Rioli. They do a lot
Mm.
of excellent work off of halfback. Um, and then hope and you would ideally think that that'll transition a lot better into that midfield
Yeah.
production. But there's the only way to really kind of prove that is if those individual players do start to lift a little bit more.
Yeah, and look, to be fair on the Gold Coast, they were pretty much like only Jai Murray on the wing. Like they lose Will Graham, Bailey Humphries, Lockie Weller.
Yeah.
All sort of more outside than inside players. Obviously, Humphries experimented in the inside midfield. Only got a clearance. I don't think it was that influential. But, you know, as I said, they put Goldman on there, who is, again, very young player. So, you know, as I said, to be fair, there's not much that they could have done on the halfback, which again probably made them look a bit worse than what it was. And maybe it was an example of like the midfield trying a bit too hard. But as I said, it didn't. As I said, I hate saying like players don't try hard enough or whatever. Because as I said, this could have just been an example of like players getting a bit frustrated that what they normally do didn't work, and then it sort of made them look a bit lazy because they weren't defending hard enough or yada yada yada. But you know, as I said, it's been too many games this year from you know what should be their core midfield unit. As I said, if this happens too long, you end up being like Carlton, and not like the good Carlton who are winning games under Josh Fraser, but like the Carlton we like to joke about.
Yeah, it's
You know,
it is a little bit concerning, and you're right. Like Lockie Weller hamstring injury, Will Graham hamstring injury, Bailey Humphrey with a chest injury. I think I might hoping it's just like a hard knock kind of thing, and it's kind of a little more, precautionary with his that sort
I
of
think he
injury.
did go to hospital to get it checked out. I think he's cleared, but it was ish at the time.
A little concerning. But yeah, like losing pretty much like half your outside players off the bat
Mm.
is not helpful at all. So it'll be real interesting to see how they're able to kind of remedy that in the coming weeks. Um, but yeah, like it's that systemic issue for the Suns, whereas Brisbane is
Yeah.
starting to really find their feet again. And whilst they're not anywhere near the two-peat, the back-to-back, just yet, they're working on it,
Mm.
and I think
Yeah.
the inevitable re-inclusion of Eric Hitwood, I think will add a little bit more in terms of having a tall marking option that plays up towards the wings,
Mm.
because I think they've been missing that a little bit. And then being able to keep Logan Morris deep, Charlie Cameron if he's
Yeah.
able to keep a bit of form, that it helps so much
Oscar
on the
Allen
ground.
when he
Oscar
comes
Allen,
back in.
Sam Draper has been doing some
Um,
decent work in the ruck.
Honestly, it's probably not his best game, but it's probably one of his more influential ones.
He doesn't necessarily need to have those big sort of ruck numbers, but like as long as he's
Mm.
able to kind of be consistent around the ground, which he's gotten a lot better at of late, definitely goes a long way for them. But then yeah, like Brisbane
Yeah.
getting those backline injuries back will definitely go a lot further of a way towards getting back to where they should be.
Yeah. And yeah, as I said, Jared Witts. Jeez. As I said, I thought he looked alright-ish after a little break, but then, you know, oof. That was
It's
again one of his worst games in a long time.
Yeah, he's
Um
definitely slipped out of form, which is not a good look right now.
no, as I said, I think we'll see another Moyle solo game. Um, you know, as I said, because again, like it's one thing if it was like going up to the bye, but they've just come off it.
Yeah.
So he just looks a bit underprepared this season. Obviously had a bit of an injury, I think, earlier on. So maybe this is just a year that he has to sort of manage a bit more than most. He's been a good club servant for a long time. It's just been rough.
Yeah,
But hopefully not. Moyle can take the opportunities because it's been solid,
yeah.
especially around the ground.
The games. Like he's been doing a fair bit amount of work, and like has stepped up a fair bit in moments too. Especially like in the games earlier in the season when Wits was out. He stepped up really well. So hopefully he gets a little bit more of that consistent solo game time and kind of really prove
Yeah.
a lot more of himself. Because I definitely think there's opportunities here to be that future number one ruck.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
All right.
Right. I don't even
MRO.
know if I read my notes, but I think that was good enough.
No, you did pretty well. I was slowly
Yeah.
reading along, and you covered pretty much everything. On the MRO side
Yeah.
of things, Ben Long was fined $1,875 for striking Jared Berry.
I'm surprised that wasn't a 1 weeker. That just
Yeah,
looked like an
I
alcohol
did
strike.
catch that on the highlights, and I was like,
Yeah.
probably should have been a match to be honest, but it's fine.
Yeah.
And then Noah Anderson was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire.
Yeah. Honestly, Long's been very hit or miss this year. That's the other thing that sort of hurt him. He kicked 2 goals, but he's just so in and out of contests these days, where he used to be a lot more involved in scoring involvements and all that. So, yeah, that's just another minor thing that someone's got to pick up or find at least another player to get a bit more involved. But, yeah, the Suns, honestly, I can't say that they've been anything but mediocre since that round 0 win. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Brisbane, right.
it's the Suns back to not being a top 8 contender for the time being. But again, we kind of expected that. Once they got the monkey off their back, of not ever playing finals, you kind of expected them, because then we all knew they weren't there yet. Like it's still got to be another couple of years, but
to a degree.
like as long as they're like kind of still in the ballpark of like they'll probably end up playing wild
In
card.
the preseason, at least one of us had it in the top 4. I can't remember who. Might have been both of us.
It could have been both of us, but like it was. Yeah. I didn't think they were gonna like win the premiership this year, but I didn't think they would be like bottom 6 contenders either.
Well, they're not gonna be, but yeah, as I said, they've just been beating bang on average teams.
Pretty much.
Pretty much it.
All right. Speaking of
talking about bang on average.
Speaking of bang on average, yeah, I was gonna say. We head over back to the West, where the West Coast Eagles hosted Port Adelaide with such an interesting clash this one, and with a 6-point margin. The Power won out 11-11-77 to 10-11-71.
Yeah, so look, as I said, it's low on the ladder versus low on the ladder. It was a tough night off both teams. It was pretty much a less prettier and weirder version of the first clash. If I was to, I wouldn't want to watch the first clash back, but if you're like a pure neutral, that was by far a better game. Port would have a minor territory advantage in the first half, but they couldn't really turn that any midfield dominance into score. The Eagles botched their entries with Rats and Aaliyah, having it a bit too easy on the intersect game. But, as I said, the Eagles converted well in the first half, then in the second half it completely flipped. The Eagles would have more dominance than Port. They had 57% time in forward half and 70% time in forward half for the third and the fourth quarter, respectively, yet got outscored in the third and capitulated 2-5 to 1-2 in the last. They were coming home with a wet sail. Port ran out of interchange with about, I think it was 8 minutes to go or something ridiculous. Maybe it wasn't that high, but it was. Actually, no, it was 8 minutes, I'm pretty sure. And they had Zach Butters off.
It was 8 minutes, and I'm pretty sure they even said post game that like they have no idea how they ran out of interchanges so early, and it was something they have to look at. So
bad math.
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of bad math in that regard.
I forgot to carry the one. Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, as I said, yeah, Paul were a bit unlucky with the whistle, but I'm not actually sure why. Look, there are a few questionable calls, especially on the ball, especially hands on the back. I think that was the most annoying. I think that's why I wrote this, because maybe we haven't talked about it too much, but it's been an on conversation with my dad, where we've just been saying, like, they really haven't called hands in the back, and they haven't called push in the back. Sorry, in the back tackling. Like, there's been a lot of push in the
Yeah,
back tackles. There's
they've
been a lot
been
of push
very
in the back and
lenient
marking
on that
concepts.
this year, which is really interesting.
Yeah. And then Waterman just like got a full out push and got the mark after Port got called for a fairly ticky one on the up. I think that's why. And look, to be honest, I don't think it's the worst umpire game of the weekend. But yeah, for some reason that's stuck in my mind. Also, a fun fact: talking about the clipping concert earlier, David Diggs went to this match, and he was like, man, I don't know how you in the AFL world can tell how a player has kicked 15 yards. No one in the audience had the heart to tell him it was meters, not yards.
Yep.
But, it is funny when you sort of feel, we get very caught up in like what's 15 meters and all. That's like one of the hardest things to call. We'll talk about that later. Anyway.
Okay. No. Actually, there is a point to this. So for those that don't actually know, when the grounds are like mowed, by the groundskeepers, you'll see this more commonly on the MCG than at any of the other grounds.
Yeah.
But the way that the grass is cut, is specifically cut a specific height, so they're cut into squares and essentially look like different shades. And each square is meant to represent like roughly 7 meters or something like that. That's how we kind of adjudicate how far 15 meters is and stuff like that.
Well, it's a diamond, really. So from corner to corner is 7.5, but obviously from width is 15.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
That's roughly how it's meant to be adjudicated. That's how most of the crowd can tell when a kick is not 15 meters. But I don't.
Yeah, but like in practice, it's like, okay, look at the diamond and also look at the players for any marking infringement. Your eyes have to be two places.
Yeah, the umpires are exactly don't exactly have like 6 sets of eyes to be able to cover everything.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm not really sure where I'm going with all this, but I put it in my notes. Yeah, but look, as I said, talking about collapses, the midfield power. The early lineups were good. Richards really worked well, but they couldn't find the balance late. And Harley, Yo, and Dersma inflicted some absolute damage in the last quarters. McCarthy and Cole. I said Cole off the half back line. I thought he was playing on the wing, but apparently he's been playing forward the last few games, and that's sort of where he was, this game. He kicked 3 shots for 2 goals, 1 miss, but he wasn't the only one. He had a really fantastic last quarter as well. And it said, to be honest, both teams have had enough positive signs despite the frustrations of this game. Port will like the early Cochrane involvements and the overall backline cohesion. The Eagles will enjoy the spine that keeps showing that, and the spine obviously being the midfield core.
Yes.
They just refuse to get beaten. Like last year, they just got absolutely smacked once they did have a loss. Like there was a few games where they were competitive and they could keep that going. But it felt like when they got beaten, they'll get smashed. Where they actually have turned the games in some. And they've done it twice against the Power.
I think one of the big things that Mini has been focusing on this year is primarily that midfield. Because the defense and the forward line can kind of function in their own sort of way. Whereas everything
should structure if they didn't lose all their players.
Exactly. But like the ball will always go through the midfield. Everything goes through the midfield. So I think that's been Mini's biggest focus this year. And the fact that they've had that like key core of BJ Williams, Kelly, Yo, and Reed pretty much 99% of the time, and it's been working for them, is such a successful little story that's come out of this year so far.
And when you look at their centre bounce attendance, it's really been consistent. Like the only move they've sort of made is Dersma into the inside midfield from the absence of Robinson and Graham.
Yeah.
He's just soaked up a few more minutes. But like, as you said, compared to last year where they were rotating up to about like 6 or 7 players, like they've kept a core. That's the biggest difference from last year. Which again, thankfully injury means that they haven't really been able to. And as I said, the only switch was really the shift from Matt Flynn to Bailey J.
which has been highly successful after the couple of games that
Yeah.
BJ has played the past couple of weeks. Has been top of the stat boards in terms of rucks in the league.
Mm. Well, maybe not top, but like
He's
not near the bottom.
high contention
It normally is.
in terms of
He's
his
had a
past
few.
few weeks. High contention.
Hmm. Oh yeah, exactly. And look, as I said, like Sweet had a few nice hit outs and opportunities, but like as I said, he was pretty much it was a pretty even matchup, I thought. Both ruckmans had moments where they contributed really well. A couple of clearances as well from each. But yeah, as I said, I think just overall, as I said for Port, look, as I said, it's just one of those things where yeah, Port's midfield is just so Butters reliant. As I said, he didn't even have his best statistical game, but just from how much contested possession he was getting, how many clearances he was getting compared to everyone else, and how much is like it's weird. Like Butters is never like a high disposal efficiency player,
Mm-hmm.
but he has a lot more damaging disposals, and that's when you don't really care about too many. Like the worst he'll do is handball to a player under pressure, which I think he does a bit too much. But when you do like 90% of what Zach Butters does, you just don't give a damn about that.
Yeah, this is
Like
very true.
it's small fry in terms of that. So.
That's why Zach Butters is the most in-demand man in the league right now. Him and Zach Bailey. They're the two. They're the two like big players on the market right now.
If Zach Bailey gets more money than Butters, then the league needs a reset. Yeah. But yeah, as I said, like it wasn't a perfect game. But as I said, both teams played well enough. As I said, this was at the end of the day, it was like what is it? It was 15th or 16th at the time, I think.
You'd be correct. So it's not 100% a spoon bowl, but it's spoon bowl ish.
Adjacent.
Spoon bowl adjacent. Unfortunately, though, Westfield for some reason I was going Westfield. West Coast backline stocks have taken another hit with Ruben Ginby out with a very serious quad injury. Thankfully, he hasn't had to go in for surgery for it, which means there is a timeline of him returning later in the year. However, it is very much up in the air as to when, because of just, I guess, mostly because of how bad it initially was. The timeline is not set in stone anytime soon.
It's really just a chance to come back at the end of the year if they want to bring him back.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even if he doesn't play for the rest of the season, I think he still should get an All-Australian blazer, because like he has done so well for this first half.
You can't after 11 games.
Statistically, you can't. But I feel like he has deserved it, like earned it.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, I do think so too. He's been taking a lot of numbers in a very, terrible backline.
Speaking of though, this was the West Coast Eagles' debut game of two-time Premiership player Brandon Starcevich, and he had a very solid performance, all things considered.
Yeah, it was fine. I think he had a lot more impact in the first. Like when Port had that dominance, he was getting a few intercepts and all that. Sort of just, sticking around some of the I don't think it was a specific role, but he was normally seen around like Berry and Joe Richards when he was in the forward line.
Oh, yes.
So, as I said, he was just sort of looking for bits and pieces.
I think because he has had to play it safe due to his concussion issues, it probably will still take him a little bit of time to fully gel. Now that he's officially into the AFL side, but he's definitely a big addition to this backline, and I think it definitely
honestly, I thought
strengthens.
I didn't really notice a drop off. I think it's just because West Coast had a lot more time in forward half in the last half. That as I said, he had a drop off, but so did the inside 50 support. So,
yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
Then on the other side of things, Josh Lai went out with a head knock, potential concussion, but I don't think it's been confirmed. So he may miss this week's game. And on the MRO side of things, Brady Hoff was fined $2,000.
Oh no, it was a failed HIA.
Okay, so he will be out for this week. Okay, good to know. And Brady Hoff was fined $2,000 for rough conduct against Zach Butters. It being
Mm,
Zach Butters, maybe a little bit deserved. Who knows? He's hot headed.
I don't actually think it was. I think I remember this, and like it was pretty much Hoff getting.
Or was it like a
Yeah, I
dangerous
don't
tackle
think
kind of
Butters.
thing? Or
Yeah, I think it might have been late contact or something. But like Butters wasn't like honestly. I'm surprised how much Harley and Butters didn't go at it. Like there was, I think, a tiny little spark. Harley had a very lively first
I know they were matched up on each
quarter.
other a lot, but I still get a kick out of
Yeah.
the rivalry between Harley and Horn Francis because I still think that rivalry is just really
Oh
funny.
yeah. Is as it is, just like it's a very adjacent. But like all Francis was, one of our best. Like I said, 3 goals.
Hmm.
Like he's a player that can often. Sometimes I think when he doesn't have the forward impact, it can look a bit lackluster. But then he just goes in the forward line and kicks like a couple goals straight. And it's like,
He's
well,
very
you're always worth being in the
he's
side.
very Heaney like in that sense that he's very much a midfield player, but loves to push up and kick those
I think
sorts of
so.
goals.
I think the difference between him and Heaney is just like he just gets fed a bit more. And I think sometimes, and with Port's midfield, it means it can go missing a bit.
Yeah,
Again, it's hard because like he looks good, but he's also got like Zach Butters just like winning him hard ball some of the time,
yeah,
and
exactly
he's a
right.
very aggressive clearance player as well. So like as much as he can run off, get a goal from centre bounce, he can also let his opponent
Yeah,
run off.
Heaney has so much more
Just the
support in
same.
comparison, so it is a little bit more
Yeah,
difficult to kind of make those hard comparisons. But there is a very similar vibe about the way Horn Francis plays that is very similar to what Heaney
yeah. I
does.
mean, like Colin Francis and Reed are just two players that want to win. Go about it a bit different ways. I think Reed's a more of a hard nut player and sometimes get away with him, whereas Horn Francis is more aggression.
Yeah,
I don't think he really
absolutely.
gives away that many free kicks. That's more a Butters thing.
No, agreed.
Um, but
Um,
yeah.
is there anything else we need to cover for this game? Do you think?
Oh, Hot Toddy scored a goal in the forward line. He's back there. That's good to see, I guess. Um, I don't know if we're really going to persist with free tolls throughout the entire year, but like in this game, it made sense.
Yeah,
When
take
you've
take
got
advantage of
Red
the Eagles'
Bazzo.
injuries whilst you could.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't obviously injury, but like Tyler Young hasn't exactly had the best season. Probably one of his better games actually this game,
Yeah,
but
this was a much better game over the past couple of weeks.
mm,
But yeah, he's still very
um,
much finding his form.
yeah, and as I've said multiple times, Red Bazzo is just a defender by convenience.
Yeah.
I don't think he's that good.
No,
Um,
no,
but
neither do I.
at the same time, I'm pretty sure it's meant to be like a midfield. I don't know what Red Bazzo's actual role is. Maybe he's lost in the shuffle, but yeah, as I said, I don't think this is what he envisioned when he got drafted, but it is what it is. He tries
Tis,
hard. I'll give
tis
him that.
what it is. All right, let's jump over now to our Sunday games, and this one I did actually get to see, as well as the VFL game between these two teams prior. That is indeed the Sydney Swans versus St Kilda up at the SCG, and with a 2-point margin, an absolutely intense game right down to the wire. The Swans do win out with a goal in the dying minutes, 15-14,
Mm.
104 to 15-12, 102.
Yeah, and I think a very mean point at the end. That was the one. This is the game that should have been a 1 point margin.
Yeah.
But then McLean had to be a jerk and kick it behind. Well, no, it wasn't McLean. Must have been the other one. I don't know who it was. I don't care.
It was someone.
This game, much more defining than like not being a 1 point margin. Again, St Kilda not knowing to be in high score thrilling battles, but this was beautifully, and it was almost a shame that they lost because their intense effort and running was beautiful. All ground, they were maybe not stopping Sydney's run, but they were creating options, and they were halting Sydney enough. And they had them on the ropes. It was absolutely beautiful second quarter. I saw midfield link up to their forward line with players like Wilson, Hall, Garcia. Absolutely phenomenal. Finding the live wire returning Ryan amongst others. He took maybe mark of the round and 5 goals. 5 goals? Yeah, 5 goals once.
Yeah, he had 5 goals. He
He's-
was absolutely electric up forward.
Yeah, exactly. So again, looked like St Kilda were going to run away with it. I think even Sydney had a couple of their injuries at that point. But they did have a defensive lapse before halftime. And look, I'm not going to criticize them too much because it was just a lapse against one of the better scoring offenses in football.
Mm-hmm.
But it did set up just enough for Sydney. And it saw the halftime margin close in. And just through nice grunt work and small line forward wins, they came back. And I will say St Kilda did sense this comeback. They tried to put this game to rest, restricting the Suns' entries. They had a great forward third quarter, 68% time in forward half. But Sydney had 3 shots. Sydney had 3 goals. 2 of them came within the last 3 minutes. And they were still in it. They could not get him away. And even though, like, Sydney had players, I think it was McCartan, someone, McCartan and McInerney on the bench. I think Riley Bice also had a knock somewhere in between, had to spend a bit of bench time. The Saints would run out of gas because they were trying hard the whole entire game. They were trying their hardest to get this win out, and they just petered. They petered out, but in a very respectful way because they were still trying offensively.
I don't think this is necessarily a disappointing loss for St Kilda. I think it's just...
this is just their defense getting loose due to how hard they ran.
Yeah, pretty much.
And like how hard they ran gave them 102 points. And like the Swans still kicked some bloody good goals. Like they kicked above average. Like that's the wrong goal that nailed the coffin. Like how? Like, you know, it's just what can you do at that point? You know, they deserve this win as much as anything, but you got to give Sydney their props for finishing. As not that they even had a bad game too. It's just the Saints were playing fantastic.
I just want to put something into comparison. So this game, obviously a 2-point margin win by the Swans. The VFL game that was played prior was a 3-point win by St Kilda, 110 to 107. So it's very clear that both of these teams are very evenly matched somehow, and both in good weather because it was a beautiful day up in Sydney. Can both kick absolute incredible scorelines. Like 17-5 was Sydney's margin in the VFL game. Like that's insanely accurate kicking, and it very, very much carried over into their AFL match too.
Yeah. And look, as I said, and both teams got their game plan going. Like Swans, they had some great handball chains that ripped the Saints open. Like it was no surprise that when the Saints did loosen up a bit, like the Swans could absolutely go to town.
Oh yeah.
And the Saints still had their forward territory game, but like they exposed the Swans defense enough. Talking about though, like a bit of upside for Sydney, because again, they were sort of struggling covering for McCartan. Will Edwards, his last half was immense. I don't think they win that game if that young kid doesn't step up. And it allowed Blakey to continue his run-off halfback role. Like, if he doesn't step up, Blakey has to play a bit more defensively. There's a bit less run and create, and they don't win this. Like, there was a lot of things that, like, Sydney didn't go their way. They won't win this. Even some Saints fans think they were a bit unlucky. I don't really think it was that much of a case. It was just a few things that people would have like checked that weren't actually, you know, like they had 2 score reviews that were like not cold, but both correct decisions. And like that 15-meter kick, that was, you know, just over 15, but it was like, well, the umpire got it wrong. It was only by a small amount. There's been worse not 15s paid.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't like single that out. That was just again unlucky more than anything.
Yeah, again, the umpires don't always get everything right. We've known this for what feels like centuries. But
yeah,
like it's this. I think this game as a whole was just really, really entertaining.
Yeah, I don't actually think this is like there was far worse umpire games that I saw. But yeah, as I said, like I actually thought that the umpiring was generally fine. But yeah. So even though the Saints dominated the inside midfield, another thing was Isaac Heaney. He absolutely crushed the Windhager tag, cemented his year as near career best. he might be in Brownlow contention. Again, the statistical models don't suggest it, but I'd give him 3 votes in a lot of games. And this game could be seen as a recruit cup, with Kerno, De Koning, Silvani, Sarong, and Roses all having solid impacts on the game. Not that there was any people that had a down game, and as he mentioned earlier, Campbell Lake played very well on debut, and I thought he had impact here and there. Wasn't a complete performance. He did dip in the second half, but pretty solid.
My favorite matchup was very much the Kerno Silvani matchup, because you could tell that they very much played on the fact that they are former teammates and not necessarily had like grudges against each other. I think they were just both like taking the mick out of the situation,
Yeah, I think they were
having a
just
bit of
having
fun.
fun.
Yeah, exactly.
It was way too much fun for a St Kilda match. I wouldn't be surprised if Ross Lyon arrested them. I'm joking, but
I don't
yeah,
know
so
if they have the bye this week, but whatever game they play next, I'm expecting them to kind of just go straight down the drain after this one.
Look, honestly, like as I said, Ross Lyon St Kilda, like it's had some issues. And sometimes scoring straight up, but I don't think it's by intent. I think it's just like the game plan. And as I said, it's about getting as much as you can off outside meter range.
Yeah.
Very different to Sydney, where as I said, Sydney will go inside and outside, rip you open with forward handballs. St Kilda go a lot more by kicks, and it's harder to maintain. It means you have to have good marking contests down the line, which Saints don't quite do. Mason Wood is. I don't think he's exactly having a career year, though. Solid enough, but like, it's whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, this was like best outcome.
Yeah,
and also coupled with obviously their inside midfield looking a lot more solid. Again, even though they, turf Jack Steele, which is still questionable. There's, been a few games where they haven't had enough defensive pressure from their inside midfield. I don't think you could doubt their offense from their inside midfield has been that lacking.
No, I think this game definitely proved like younger players like Garcia like have really really shown their worth. I think for such young players, and like even though a bit of their midfield is very aging, like you've got McRae in there, who we had a lot of question marks about after he fell off a little bit he fell off quite a lot in terms of his performance last season. I think definitely has stepped up a little bit more this season. So there's still some very solid positives, and like the return of Naz coming back from injury is always a good sign. He looked really good this week. Very much a lot of good positive signs for St Kilda in this game, and yeah, I think it's literally just them running out of legs, as to them not being able to finish it off.
Yeah, I take that back. Apparently, I'm just looking at the stats. St Kilda are the second best defensive stoppage team. So there you go. They're top 3 in terms of differential score from stoppage. So, Fremantle the best, Sydney the second. So technically, apart from the 2 dominant teams, they've done pretty good. Like in a few other areas, but it is St Kilda.
That is standard St Kilda behaviour, to be fair.
Yes. So honestly, you say all you like about the recruits and all that. I don't think that's been the biggest thing. I just think it's how much can this outside game carry them for such a forward line with no tall forwards.
If they're able to keep this sort of energy up against every other team in the comp, they can definitely be formidable if they're able to kind of take it to Sydney.
I think the problem is they do actually like. There's been too many games this year where they've lacked effort. They've just lacked forward line conversion.
It is most of their forward line due to injury.
Like everyone's like, oh, as I said, their recruits, bad, or they should be a bit better. But it's like I've never had the problem with them spending money on these players. It's just the fact that it's so glaringly obvious that they've got no forward line.
Yep.
And all they did was brought Liam Ryan, who again, fantastic this game, is a bit older, and I wouldn't exactly say a reliable.
And whilst it is a little bit more common across a lot of the teams to swing a defender up forward, St Kilda should not have to rely on Silvani being swung up forward to have any sort of like forward line pressure and impact.
Gonna put it because like they've tried Keeler, Caminiti. I mean, obviously is the opposite, but like he just doesn't look good whenever he goes forward.
Yeah,
so I can understand it. Like they play Mitch Owens as a tall forward. he just looks
He does play tall, to be fair, but again, he's not a tall forward,
yeah,
which
but
is the issue.
he just doesn't. Nah. So yeah. Anyway, so I don't think they have much to work with, but like also they didn't do anything to try and curtail that. So it is what it is.
Yep.
But on goal average, actually, Ryan is having his best season. This would be the only time he's averaging 2 goals per game in his career. So
big upsides. Hopefully we'll get to see more of it.
Yeah, I mean he's got space there.
That's true. Now that he has space and some more opportunity, it definitely gives him more options. On the injury side of things, as we've already kind of talked about, Justin McInerney went out with a hamstring injury and Tom McCartan with concussion. So neither of them will play this week. And that now brings us to our last Sunday game, a big Victorian clash between the Bombers and Carlton. Everyone was expecting this to be like a really, really boring kind of game. But it was surprisingly quite entertaining from what I saw. With a 5-point margin, the Blues winning out 10-12-72 to 10-7-67.
Yeah, look, as I said, this was a sloppy game. I didn't watch this, as I said, I was at a concert, but like from what I gather, it was like sloppy. There was errors, but it was like two teams gritting their teeth at the same time. Carlton have been best when the balls come to ground in a contest. Essendon have been best when the balls come to ground in a contest. They tried their hardest to make contest skills go down when that happens. The biggest maybe damnation and probably why Carlton didn't run away with this game was just the polish. I think when Essendon made errors, they sort of got away with it, at least from what I could see on the scoreboard and the highlights, whereas Carlton were a bit wasteful.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I said, talking about disposal, Zach Merritt, I wrote his disposal was stinky, which I don't think I've ever written about a player's disposal, but it's probably true. Mart is otherwise solid statistical output. Durham picked up a lot of the load, so much so that Carlton shifted the Hewitt tag over to him. I don't think he was actually tagging before, because Merritt played on halfback, which is a choice. Can't say it didn't work. They were pretty alright.
It's definitely a choice, considering he is meant to be a midfielder. But I mean, if it worked for them, I guess it worked.
I mean, it depends. It didn't set up his game. But, as I said, it was such an aberration. Like, as I said, I could not believe it. Like, when you send me that picture of, like, Merritt -2R, which is champion data rating, it might have been 0.2. I think it was 0.3.
I think it was 0.3.
Which was the second worst on the ground. But from 33 disposals, that's hard. So he had -7.8 from ball use and -7.5 with post-clearance equity, which means I'm pretty sure either his clearances went to the opposition or he gave away a few free kicks.
Probably a bit of both.
He didn't give away a free kick, so they just all his clearances went to the opposition, basically.
Well, there you go.
Which isn't good.
No, that's not good.
Yeah. So, again, that must be. He must. Oh, of course, because he's on the halfback, so he got the post clearance but turned it over.
Okay, sorry. That makes more sense. There you go.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's hard, but anyway. Essendon, they won centre clearances 13-8. They won clearances 35-28. So, like, what they did in the middle was fine. Stoppage, they lost, but it was 3-5 to 4-3. It really didn't. It wasn't a huge difference in the scheme of things, and they actually had some movement. Like, their movement was far better than it has been this year. They scored 41 off halfback, with decent defensive half to score the percentages.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as I said, the one thing holding them back though was a very trying young Blues blackline. Sorry, I read this in the wrong order. Even though Caddy was fantastic, I think that Dirksen, Dean, and Cowan are cementing themselves into this defense, especially considering they didn't have the support of Wiedering this week.
Mm-hmm.
It might just bring their metrics up to be a solid team. And then, I can't really say much about this game. I didn't watch it, but like we saw Dul Mackay goals. I want to say though joins the King twins for the first time that's happened. Because the other Mackay matchup was defense and forward. So
Yes,
I'm imagining this is the first
and
time twins have kicked goals in the same game for different teams.
I think so. The only interesting fact that I know in regards to the Mackay twins specifically is that this is only the second game that they've actually played against each other.
Yeah.
Which does make for a fun little like Star Wars Attack of the Clones kind of pun because of the fact that they're basically clones, being identical twins.
Yeah, I was a running joke as well. Yeah.
But yeah, like it is very interesting to see Mackay swung forward. Oh, sorry, Ben Mackay. Let me be more specific. Ben Mackay swung
Yeah.
forward, and like actually have really solid impact.
Yeah.
Which isn't all that common to see from him, considering he hasn't really looked that good as a defender, kind of at all. But the fact that Essendon needed a reliable tall forward, they swung him up forward. They swung Langford down into defense, and it surprisingly worked out.
Yeah, well, I mean, all he has to do is have a contest, and I think he did a bit more than that. Like he was trying to be a obviously he's playing a replacement role for Peter Wright as his out, but as I said, for basically being poor man's right, he doesn't have that game. I don't think this game's close. So yeah, as I said, he contributed solidly. Again, statistically not that great, but yeah, as I said, they need as much impact as they can from any of their senior players, but just from where they are, they need all things firing. And it was almost a bit of a shame they didn't get with this one because they had a lot going right. As I mentioned, Durham had a fantastic game. Setterfield was great. Sardis obviously joining that midfield mix. And Zach Reed, probably best on ground. He played on defense on Kemp. I don't think Kemp scored. He scored 2 goals a one. I don't know if he lost any of those contests or whatever. Again, but he intercepted his heart out and was pretty fantastic. So, and Farrow was really good as well. Or was it? Oh, Roby, I think it was the other one. Either way,
Roby had a really solid game. That I can confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think this is genuinely a positive step for the Bombers. Despite despite everything going on off field, and the injuries that they still have. It was the best game sustained
in the Solomon era.
Well, out of 2 games, yeah, you'd think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for Carlton, again, this is 4 wins in a row under a caretaker coach, which isn't entirely unheard of. But the fact that it's in a row is more the interesting thing here. Part of it, you could say that they've had an easy run, but again, they had to come up against Collingwood, not Collingwood, Geelong, sorry, and the Bulldogs, and they won both of those. So it is very interesting that where the Blues are at the moment. I think a lot of that also does come down to just their leadership on field as well. I think Harry Mackay has been doing a good job up forward. Obviously Cripper is doing some fantastic work in the midfield once again. He's just doing what he does best, and that has freed up so much more of their midfield talent to do what they do best, and it has made for some really fun contests.
Yeah, and I think the good thing is like the Blues didn't have their midfield game going, but it didn't let this unwind because again, the Blues were down 20 points somewhere near the third quarter, and they still had the resolve to get this done. Like again, it felt like if this was a Voss Blues, they would have found a way to lose this, but again, no offense to Patrick Voss. Always no offense to Patrick Voss.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't ever want to cause offense to Patrick Voss.
Don't want to get away with the don't want to get in the way of the prancing pony. But Michael Voss, again, he didn't have the group cohesive. He didn't have the group in a cohesive fashion.
Yeah,
and they're starting to reclaim that. So even in not their best, they're still getting it done, which is good.
Yes, absolutely. On the MRO side of things, thankfully no injuries from this match. Sullivan Roby, George Hewitt, and Patrick Groups were all fined $1,000 each for contact with an umpire. Ben Ainsworth and Lockie Blackiston were fined $1,000 each for instigating a melee. I'm going to assume against each other, because there's no other reports on that regard. And then Jacob Farrow was fined $1,000 for other misconduct against Brody Kemp. But yeah, not too much else to take away from this match. So that
Mm.
leads us to the game played today. The traditional King's birthday slash Queen's birthday match between Collingwood and Melbourne for the Big Freeze, the 12th Big Freeze. I hope you all
Mm.
got your beanies and or donated otherwise to the wonderful cause of Fight MND. It was so wonderful to see the entire MCG pretty much colored in blue rather than black and white because screw Collingwood. I did see a report of like a couple up in Brisbane do a huge donation apparently.
Oh
Like
yeah,
which is
it was like a mill or something.
it was more than 1 mil. I think it was like 12, which is kind
Was
of
it?
ridiculous. Um, but I mean, I guess the thing with charity in Australia specifically is that it is
Mm.
all tax deductible. So that's probably, let's be honest, that's probably a part to play in that regard. But besides that, it
Yeah,
goes to charity, it goes to a very important
it
cause,
goes to yeah.
and
It's better than staying in the Cayman Islands.
absolutely. And on top of that, we got a pretty fantastic game to watch. With an 8 point margin, the Demons did win out 12-11-83 to 11-9-75.
I think this is the second best match of the round. Obviously Saints and St Kilda was another level. Hawthorn Western Bulldogs was funny, but again, I don't think the quality was quite there. And Adelaide and Geelong probably would be the next up and runner. But, as I said, this match just, with the storyline and all that, the thing is, it had that intensity about it. Like, from go, and look, as I said, it was actually fairly loose to start with, but it wasn't loose as like in poor defense. It was like loose as in like players were just slotting it out of anywhere. And it
Yep.
was just like anytime you got it forward, it seemed like it was resulting in a goal. And it wasn't always just the defense. So yeah, it was really nice to start. And then both teams sort of knuckled down. Like it was very much I wouldn't say like teasing, but like a much more restricted second half. Like the
Mm-hmm.
marking game was a tiny bit harder. There was a fair amount of tackling pressure. Um, Obviously, both teams were sort of trying to look to break the game by hands more than feet. Nick Dacos, he had such a great first half. And honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that he may have kicked the winner, because I kicked the winner, I think he probably should have won a medal. Might have been a controversial second place yet again in his career. So, yeah. But yeah, him and Josh were absolutely on fire. But Melbourne, very wide range of contributors. Max Gorm was really, really good. Kazai Pickett, again, at the very start and very end, he absolutely broke the game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even though he did try to lose it, I don't know if you saw, but in the, I think it was in the last quarter, he had a snap that fell short from 30 meters out.
Yep.
And with 30 seconds to go, he takes a mark inside 50. 50 seconds to go, mark out inside 50. He basically can tie the game up, but he chooses to play on. But he kicks the goal, which is like, technically you did the wrong thing, but like because you got a goal, no one will care.
Yep.
But if you're king, you're just like, man,
Take
those
take the
percentages,
30.
take the 30. I mean, geez, if you can take one lesson from Ben Mackay, Ben? No,
No, it was
other
Harry.
Mackay. Harry. Yeah. Just take the 30 every time. The umpires will
Uh,
always give it to you.
yeah, it was. There was definitely some very interesting moments out of this game.
Mm.
I didn't see too
Yeah.
much of it, but from what I did see, like a lot of that work from Cozzy in the fourth quarter, even though he definitely took his chances at risking it all,
Yeah.
was
It
absolutely
was almost a
wonderful.
hero to zero. But he ended up winning the now named Neil Danaher medal. And you know what? To be honest, it was relatively deserved. And plus, hell, the first one going to a Melbourne player, it's sort of fitting. Anyway, other than that, like, there was a lot of really interesting performance. Again, Max Gorn versus Darcy Cameron, especially in that last quarter, was so interesting because both of them played defense, which was really interesting because, like, in the commentary, look, I said, I hate when Gary Lyon has a tactical analysis because it's normally him droning off about the same thing for 10 minutes.
Yep.
Why don't they put the Max Gorn in the forward line? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, because like Melbourne also want to be able to defend and put on the pressure that Darcy Cameron's been putting in.
Correct.
You know, like if one of those ends up in a turnover and it's quick going the other way, then Max Gorn's there to save the day.
Max Gorn is a defensive ruck for a reason. He's the perfect player to slot into those sorts of holes and quell any sort of offense. That's why he does what he does so well.
Yeah. Shout outs though to obviously Darcy Cameron. He was fantastic in that like last minute defensive stint. Obviously, big sack Billy, big time player. You know he was putting in the work.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't petty. He actually did find a few moments, but they were so good that I don't think like Cameron, like Frampton or anything. Like one of them, he just like fended off a defender like it was Harley frickin' Reid. And he just slots one, so it's like, you know, what are you going to do there?
I do, whilst we're on the topic of like just pointing out individual players, I do want to shout out mid-season recruit Mitch Pohasky. I still have no idea how to pronounce that last name. Who obviously debuted for Collingwood after being picked up in the mid-season draft. Kicked a goal as well, right in the pocket, which is very, very solid from him. So really good to see that he had a solid outing in his first go at AFL level. And yeah, like there's just so many moments like through this game that where it was all primarily it was primarily individualistic, but like that was mostly up to the forward lines. A lot of like the defensive efforts and the midfield efforts were very selfless and like were very what's the good word? We're very brave in a lot of the contests. Yeah. Like a lot of those contests that the players took were extremely risky. And unfortunately, there were moments that did not go so well. We'll talk about those. But like when it came down to the times where players needed to be that more individualistic, always came down to that forward line. And like honestly, good on them for being able to convert truly for the most part. Like 11-9, 12-11 is pretty good.
Yeah, I honestly think like, because a couple of those were just rush behinds anyway, so it's like, you know, I really think that this was a good goal scoring contest because both defenses were pretty on song. Again, I think that what's his name, Daniel Turner had a pretty good game. Coughed off the ball a couple of times on ball use, but apart from that, pretty good. And then when you're talking about forwards, it was just the range of them. Like Jack Buller, you know, starts the season, looks pretty mediocre. One of the more middling recruits of the season comes in. A couple of really nice marks for 2 goals. The other one, Luke Kenterfield. Luca Kentfield kicks a really good one, very important. Angus Anderson, again, didn't do that much on, but kicks an absolute beauty of a goal late. Almost probably puts them towards winning it if it wasn't for the late magic of Keziah Pickett. Actually, no, it was Van Rooyen who I think he put the... I can't remember.
I cannot help you here.
Sorry, no, it was Paddy Cross. That's the other one I wanted to mention about a like random goal out of nowhere. And it was a banger. Jeez, I think that was like on the boundary line with like a player trying to tackle him and he just nails it. It was like, oh, Jai Sarong, you know your match winner? Bunch of pish. It was, you know, just absolutely banger.
It's like a chef's kiss kind of moment right there.
Chef kiss, mwah. So yeah, this game like really, really good. Ran Steele as well. I think again. So the thing I want to say about Collingwood, you know, disappointing loss, but like, you know, Harvey Harrison comes back in, plays an okay role. You know, you've got your young players playing well. You know, McCreary has one of his better pressure games. You know, and it's still led by the leaders. But as I said, it's a core, and your younger players are playing well, and they'll consolidate. And while they do have some players going to retire, as I said, it's not like there's nothing coming up from underneath. Like, I think a lot's to be said about Collingwood, where people are getting a bit too negative on them, because I think, as I said, because of that list profile, because they're Collingwood, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong, I love it that they're not doing that well this year, but they're going to be fine in the future. I can't really see them being bad for the next 5 years. This is just sort of a natural dip for the list. But again, Melbourne, they get a goal, a win. It was brave. They needed it. They've been a bit off. Losing a couple of games.
Yeah.
But they're back in contention, and as I said, that was just a brilliant way to cap off a very fantastic week of football.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was a massive point of tragedy in this game. I won't start off with that one just yet. I will mention Braden Maynard first, who went out with a shoulder injury. It's one that's kind of been playing him on and off for a while now, so he might be out for a couple of weeks.
Look, I will give it to Maynard. Again, no one's favourite player, but hurts his shoulder in one contest. And, it's like, oh, I'll play. And then just goes, like, hard nut ball in the second contest and, like, stuffs it up. Like, he did not think twice about going for another contest. Like, he is a hard nut. You cannot deny his ferocity at the contest. Obviously, he takes it a bit too far at times. But he bleeds Collingwood, and it is unfortunate to see him out.
Yes. There has been a little bit of a note on Max Gawn, with a shoulder concern that he's been having on and off for a while now. It did look like he went in for a contest and might have injured it trying to go for that contest. So there'll be a couple of eyes on him over the next couple of weeks as to whether he's going to be staying on the park or might just take a little bit of a break to recover it. And then obviously the big one, after a nasty incident, Brody Myercheck ended up with a neck/head knock injury, potential spinal injury with the awkward way that he landed in the contest, and is currently in hospital being attended to. We're hoping it's not anything majorly serious that could not just end his career, but make life post-footy very difficult for him. So we're wishing him all the best, and hopefully good news coming out of the doctors in the coming days.
Yeah, we really just want him to be in a healthy state, and then whatever news comes from football happens. But, as I said, he was a shame. Obviously, it was such a big sting in the game, and it was actually sort of the pivot point to where this contest went from very attacking to very defensive. Obviously, I don't think it was a direct reason, but you can't deny that there would have been a fair few players hurting. Like, this was a brave contest. This is why I would say that this was the second best game of this contest, even though like Geelong and Adelaide had a lot of heart, had a lot of good play. It was just the occasion. So we can sometimes talk about like how Collingwood focused they can be, but like this game had nothing really to do with Collingwood, and yet you felt like they were just as much a part of this moment than obviously Melbourne, with the direct connection to Neil Danaher.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think kind of the fact that Brody Myercheck was a Collingwood player, it definitely adds that sort of bridge as to why everyone felt it. But yeah, like even though Melbourne are the only ones with direct connection to Neil Danaher, like Collingwood have really embraced the fact that they are included in this every year, and really do make the most.
Internally, they'll see it as a privilege. Like, you say what you want about Collingwood, when they are involved in a moment, they try and make it as much as theirs as humanly possible.
It's the same as any other key marquee game of the year, whether it's for charity or not. Like Anzac Eve, Anzac Day. What are the other big ones? Dreamtime, obviously, is always a big one, but the fact that Sir Doug Nicholls rounds is now a wholesale inclusion of all 18 teams, that does make that really special. Obviously, round one is always a big special event as well. all these key marquee games are very much a great privilege for a lot of these teams, even though a lot of them turns out end up being mostly Collingwood.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue with that when you're technically one of the biggest clubs in all of Australia.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially when it comes to this one specifically, like it's never about the game. It is always about the charity, and I think it will always will be about the charity. Oh, the traditional Good Friday clash between North Melbourne and Carlton was another one I was thinking of, because that one is also always about charity too. So these sorts of games are never about the game itself. It's always about what we can do and what we can give to the ones that need it more.
Exactly.
All right. As much as that is a little bit of a sad note, we now have to jump over to the fixture for the week ahead. So we're going to start off with our Thursday night clash between the Bulldogs and the Crows at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, and this one should be fairly interesting. Where's... Oh no, I can't find my match simulations. I can't... Match previews, there we are. Okay, Western Bulldogs and Adelaide. Yeah, this is going to be a very interesting one, even without me seeing this. We got the Western Bulldogs, who, again, clearance-based team against a weak clearance team at home, even though, like, Adelaide have been good, even though I don't think the Western Bulldogs are quite there, this is an opportunity for them to maybe not flex, but definitely nab a win, where, as I said, you might expect the Crows to win. Even last year when the Crows were obviously really fantastic, this was a game that the Crows did actually lose despite finishing on top of the ladder. Very even head-to-head, last 10 matches, 5-5. But as I said, the real difference is, like, you got defense, and even though they're not as good, their defensive half theoretically is a bit better than the Bulldogs. But, as I said, the Bulldogs attacking is going to be hard to, say that they can't really run. At home, I think they're going to score a bit too much, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Adelaide,
this is definitely a game.
Solid, and it really depends if they lose. I was about to say Murray. He was the one that Butts.
Yes.
If they lose him,
the loss of Butts may affect how their defensive system kind of operates. Again, they've been able to fill in the hole pretty well without Keane, who may potentially be back in the coming weeks. But yeah, with the loss of Butts, that does open up a hole once again in their backline, which may be a concern. On the Dogs side of things, though, this is definitely an opportunity for them to make their mark in their return to being a top 8 threat. Obviously, they're sitting 6th at the moment, which is really good, but like they're still not exactly at 100%. But if they're able to take their advantages whilst they can, this is absolutely a game where they can become that potential threat again.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, like the Bulldogs are sitting above the Suns at the moment. And as I said, like the Bulldogs have had so much injury. Like, honestly, in my mind's wins above expectations, I would probably say the Bulldogs and Melbourne are, like, by far the best teams. Like, I know Fremantle's had, like, a stellar year, but they're probably only, like, okay, maybe they're 3 games above expectation. Anyway, yeah, the fact is, Western Bulldogs, considering what they've, like, been done, like, they're one of the better performing teams. I will give them a bit of faith. I'm going to tip the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning Bulldogs on this one as well. But jumping over now to our Friday night clash with Geelong hosting the Gold Coast Suns, aka the Gary Ablett Jr. Cup.
Yeah, so again, Geelong was such an easy tip last time that they played, and yet the Gold Coast got the spring on them. Maybe it wasn't an easy tip, but like, you thought it was going to be like a very big clash. Obviously, we saw what happened. But the big difference between this is just like how much Geelong outside game is not as terrible it was in that round 1 contest. And it's at GMHBA. So you're not going to worry about like the greasy conditions affecting things. Yeah, honestly, there's no real reason for me to think that Gold Coast will make it a repeat offence. Yeah, they haven't really been around it to solid teams. I don't actually really. I won't believe it until I see it. I wouldn't tip them against a top four team, especially away, the way that things are going, unless it was like a spate of injuries or something. But, as I said, again, it's so hard because, like, technically you could say, oh, Geelong's clearances are a bit of a weakness, but, like, Gold Coast has been worse. They're one of the worst clearance teams in the league at the moment. So, it's amazing to say that with a Petrarca, Rowell, and Anderson midfield, but that's the
Yeah, you
facts.
think it wouldn't make any sense for that to be the case, but it does.
Yeah, it's just how it is. Like, that's match stats. Match stats don't lie.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it is what it is. So it's very hard to see them doing that. I think the biggest thing that they could maybe try and do is set up their defense a bit more, because I don't like Geelong do get them from stoppages, but they're more forward half stoppages, which are a bit easier to defend because it's a bit compressed. So that might be where Geelong can clean that up a tiny bit. But sorry, not Geelong, Gold Coast. So look for the Gold Coast to be a bit more defensively accountable. But yeah. They're 2 clearances per game below the Eagles in differential.
That is insanity. Like, you would not pick it, but that is, hey, stats don't lie.
And even if you're like, but the center clearances is like, yeah, like they're not the worst team, but it's like Collingwood, GWS tied last, Gold Coast last. Sorry, third last.
Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards Geelong if you're obviously tipping. And that then brings us on to our Saturday games. We are back to 8 games again this week. Actually, we're at 7. Hang on, 1,
6. Last week was 8 games.
3, 4, 5, 6. We're back to 7 games this week. With 4 teams on the bye, but we're jumping over to our Saturday game now at the MCG, where the Demons will take on the Bombers.
They could make it 2 in a row, could they? Like, they've had a good run against the Demons, like recently, 4 of the last 5, and pretty solid. At the MCG, obviously, I don't think that's going to be too much of an advantage.
I want to say yes.
They have been winning.
I want to say yes, purely for the fact that it would be funny. But I think the Demons are in much better form and a much better situation than they were in the last few occasions that they've come up against the Bombers.
Yeah, obviously not last time. Like in last time, they were actually in better form going into this game. But you're right. As I said, the Melbourne were very much up and down during that.
Yes.
So statistically, obviously, it's Essendon. Like, they're not winning many of the statistics. In terms of avenues that they might, sort of win. It's obviously the defense. Like Melbourne, they're not a very defensive team at all. So. Just a chance for Essendon to run with and create scoring. But, if they can't stop some of that outside run, some of that, movement from Melbourne, I mean, it's just going to be 2 progressing score worms, like Melbourne going probably at like 1.5 Essendon scoring rate. And that's if they're lucky.
Yeah, they're going to need, I feel like, a lot of luck maybe for this one. So, safe tip. Obviously, the Demons. If you want to play it a little bit risky, don't.
The Demons.
But now we'll jump over to our next game. For some reason, this is really throwing me off, even though I know this is exactly what the deal is. We're over at Optus Stadium. However, it's North Melbourne hosting the Eagles, which makes for a very interesting situation crowd-wise. Because I don't know what kind of crowd they're going to get, considering Eagles.
They'll get it easy.
I'm sure they'll get a crowd, but I mean, like, I feel it feels weird, I guess, for Eagles supporters because they now have to pay for an away ticket.
Yeah. Eagles fans have money. They're posher.
It is Perth.
Than the
this is true.
Fremantle fans.
This is true.
Honestly, I don't know why. I reckon West Coast have the more FIFO fans. I've never quite figured out why that might be the case. I don't think more FIFO people live north of the river, but
Well,
I don't
I
know.
think it's more so for the fact that like FIFO, they are all just they travel to the north. Like all of like their mining operations and stuff is all up in the northern parts of WA. So does it technically count?
Coast aren't a north team. It's just Fremantle South.
They're north of Freo.
And
Technically counts.
I think, yeah. I don't identify West Coast with the north, but I do identify northern Perth being fans of West Coast, if that makes sense. But anyway.
Onto the game itself.
Onto the game itself. North Melbourne's attack is like way better than West Coast defense. West Coast defense should theoretically be better than North's attack, but I think just like the injuries means that North should win this, but like, oh god, after last game, after losing.
Yeah, we've lost a little bit of faith in the
other
Roos
game
this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna tip them, but geez, I don't like it.
And
West Coast should be angry.
I actually don't
like they'll feel like
know where I'm leaning on this one. On one hand, like I still want to go with North. I think their growth and their kind of progress has been so much better. Granted, they've had a little bit more time
over the year.
over the year. But I really like how the Eagles have been structured lately, especially in that midfield. The forward line is functioning decently. Granted, a lot of it is Waterman, but that's besides the point. Shanahan has actually been doing a lot of good work as well, to be fair. It's just the defense is just hampered with a huge amount of injuries at the moment, especially with Akinbi. So it does lay a big question mark as to whether they're going to be able to handle Larky and Curtis and Zerha and Trembath.
You've got two teams that, don't necessarily get the most inside 50s, don't exactly get the most meterage. North obviously improving a lot in their season. But if I was going to say, okay, you've got a team where they're two struggling, like, I expect North to do much more with the football in their forward. Obviously, West Coast played the lights out last time they played him. I think that was a very underrated win, considering A, where we expected them to be, and B, some of the individual performances.
Very true.
I just don't expect that to happen twice, but, I might be wrong. I honestly, again, you're sort of reassessing the Roos a bit if they lose, but, again, Port lost to West Coast once this year, so I guess losing twice to West Coast is still going to be bad. West Coast will have a good season if they win.
Yeah, again, this either way,
they're on 16 points.
Regardless of who wins, this genuinely puts both teams again 1 foot ahead of their rebuild and their growth and their progress and stuff. Honestly,
I still don't believe it with North, but
best outcome for this game is a draw. Just to be honest, but I would love the West Coast Eagles to win because I
just have to expect North to win this. We're just looking at North to be a proper team. And then we can sort of be like, okay, they've had a couple of bad losses.
If North really want to be that team that they have been so far this season, they have to win this. To put it simply.
Yeah. But otherwise, we're just being like, okay, there's not that much difference between the bottom 4 and North, and that's what's concerning.
Exactly. There are definitely avenues though for the Eagles to win this out, but we're going to jump over now to our Saturday night clash with Port Adelaide hosting the Sydney Swans.
Yeah. Apart from one prelim final and one game last year, Port's had the wood over Sydney. That being said, oh geez,
Port are currently bottom 4 and Sydney are currently top 2. So
yeah, I think that's got to count a tiny bit against them. Only just though. Yeah, Port's defense is fine. But yeah, Sydney's attack has been absolutely phenomenal, and the thing is, Port's just butchered their attack, and they're just going to get punished off the halfback.
Yeah, they will.
Sydney's movement's so good, and they're going to get back half turnovers, which, again, it's not the worst place to turn the ball over. Or, sorry, I should say, Sydney gets intercept generation from their back half, which again, like a normal team, Port Adelaide can manage to defend, but I think Sydney might be a bit much. I guess you just expect like a 30-ish point margin, probably on paper, and that's probably being nice to Port.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily expecting a blowout, but I am expecting a comprehensive win from the Swans in this one.
I'll be surprised if much of this game was spent within arm reach of Port. Again, I don't think they'll be disgraceful. It hasn't really been the MO this season, but I just don't see it coming against Sydney.
No, either. That now brings us to our Sunday games, where Richmond are hosting the Brisbane Lions down in Hobart. The last time these two teams faced off down in Tassie was actually a draw last season. So there's a very high possibility of that happening again, especially with Brisbane's slump in form as of late. But it was a draw, right? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure.
No, you read North. It's
or,
Richmond.
All right.
Richmond.
Or is this? Oh, is this our first game down? Is this our first game down in Tassie? I'm pretty sure we played last year.
Hey, North and Brisbane was the draw last year. Richmond ain't beating Brisbane.
Okay, I can't remember what I read.
They played okay. There was 13-12-90 to 18-10 118 last time they played in 2025. And then the other times they got absolutely smacked.
That tracks. Okay. Anyway. This is down in Hobart. Brisbane don't play very well. Down here, part of that is due to the conditions, because it's so cold in comparison to Queensland. Granted, Richmond don't ever play in Tassie. This is our first time in a very, very long time that we've played an actual AFL match down in Tassie. In that case...
And you're forgetting Lions, naturally prone to ninjas because they don't have the stripes for camouflage. So...
Correct.
Gotta consider that.
Correct. We have that advantage. But yeah, realistically, Brisbane should win this comprehensively outright. I don't. As much as I appreciate the bye, and hopefully it does lead to us bringing back in some players from injury. I don't have a huge amount of confidence going up against the reigning premiers. It'd be nice. But
according to the Wheelo stat matchup, there is one area which Richmond does better than Brisbane. Believe it or not, it's actually stopping opposition scoring, not scoring chains, defensive 50 to forward 50 movement. Brisbane are actually a bit looser than Richmond. A couple of percent too, so it's not insignificant.
Interesting.
But everything else is like a very significant, margin to Brisbane. So yeah, I would, even though Brisbane's form being iffy, they'll make it 2 in a row.
Yeah, it's definitely definitely a game that very much favors the Lions.
I will say, Richmond make it a scrap, and it'll be like a 20-point margin.
I think if we play this like a lot more of a ground ball game, we could definitely make this a lot more of a close margin. Especially if it's not like massively windy or anything like that either. Because otherwise that could also play a huge factor in terms of ball movement. But yeah, I'd comprehensively go the Lions, I would say. But that brings us over now to our last game of the round with a St Kilda and Giants clash at Marvel Stadium. I like the little rivalry that these two teams kind of have, just purely for the fact they've always kind of been around the same ballpark in terms of form, performance, etc., etc. So I'm very interested to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, and they're probably two of the greatest teams at the moment doing okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
GWS found a bit of form before the bye. St Kilda have had a fair few solid matches. Not that many wins, but, pretty respectable in most matches. So, it's like, where do we go from here? And it's like, we've got the probably better forward line of GWS versus the better converting St Kilda. You've got St Kilda with a bit more direct ball movement, but like GWS that can be a bit more clinical when they actually get it into their forward 50. So there's a lot of like variables, and it's a very interesting matchup. I don't think I'll like comfortably tip a team. I'll probably decide on the day, but or the team lineups. But yeah,
Yeah.
this should be the closest match of the round. Maybe North and West Coast. Yeah.
Yeah,
Honestly, yeah, as I
I'm
said,
kind of
it doesn't
feeling.
seem like the top of the table ones are going to be that interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much feeling very similarly that this one could be very close, and it might not be a comfortable, confident tip
Hmm.
until like last minute, and even then, like because these two teams match up against each other in such a middle of the pack ways, like it's
Hmm.
just going to be really hard to feel any sort of confidence.
It's Yeah, it's like these teams have theoretical lines of attack if they like don't get in their own way.
Mm.
And as I said, GWS is like a bit due to injury. St Kilda's a bit due to personnel. But as I said, it's not overly concerning. Like I've never really gotten the like alarm bells at St Kilda, even if like they haven't technically improved with their recruits. I think they're playing a more consistent brand of football, which they haven't in the last couple of years.
Agreed.
Um, so it's just whether GWS, who are inconsistent, will bring it this game. I honestly actually think if you're going for conservative, tip St Kilda. Otherwise, just go with whoever. I don't think there's a wrong tip in this one.
No, I definitely don't. I definitely think it's very 50-50. This case.
Hmm.
And there are four teams that have the bye this week, being Collingwood, Carlton, Hawthorn, and a well-deserved Fremantle. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you all so much for liking, commenting, subscribing, and just coming and hang out with us this week. Do you have much on?
Yeah, I got like bits and pieces, but they're all like I don't know. What do you call it? Responsibilities, adult
Yeah.
responsibilities, which is boring. Um, but yeah. I think I don't know. It's too late at night. Yeah, too
Yeah, I
late at
don't.
night. It's like 10:30 for
I
me.
am working
One.
6 days this week, so I'm pretty much all just going to be focused on work. Maybe do a little bit more unpacking of the apartment. Again, I'm still waiting for some furniture to be rebuilt because we broke some dowels in the move, so I need to replace those. Um, but other than that, like, yeah, it's just coasting through another week, pretty much trying to catch whatever footy I can, and hopefully just yeah, hopefully it's a good week for footy. As much as
Yeah,
what we're kind of looking at doesn't really tell us that it could be. There's definitely some avenues for some close games this week, I think.
yeah. I didn't necessarily thought this round was going to be a barn burner, but I mean, look what happens. So
Hey, I'm absolutely all for it. But without further ado, thank you all so much once again, and we'll see you all next week for episode 110. Take care.